Alright, some of you know about T-Mobile's little inside antenna, which is probably a third the size of this QuadMini, but they obviously, Waveform, I mean, is aware of that antenna, and they want to be a direct competitor to it. They're slightly more expensive. I think Waveform is $120 for just the antenna itself versus the $100 from T-Mobile. But if you use my 5% discount, which is code NATERTATER, that knocks a little bit more off of the Waveform one as well. But they actually sent their antenna and T-Mobile's antenna out to a third-party test site to get an idea of what the difference is. So that's what this PDF shows you. This is something you can get and you can download yourself. But the third-party test they used was Antenna Test Lab, and they tested each of the ports, and they did the sweep of both the frequency as well as the direction of it, so you can tell if it's omnidirectional or directional antenna. And then they measure a couple key things. One is the isolation, so the multiple input, multiple output signal. You need, in order to have good performance, you need separation between those multiple inputs and multiple outputs. And so it measures how well it does at isolating them. You look at the radiation efficiency, which is showing you how effective the antenna is at getting that signal out wirelessly. Then you have the VSWR, which measures how well the antenna is transmitting the power that's fed into it. And then you have the radiation plots, which shows you the distribution of that signal across the antenna from different directions, from both the top view, the side view, of the antenna. Now this deck actually also has their Quad Pro. I'm not going to talk about that one. I'll have a separate video showing the performance of the Quad Pro. So we look at just the two left ones. We have the T-Mobile indoor mount and this QuadMini. Now both of them are omnidirectional, at least that's how they're marketed. And I would say both of them for an indoor install are almost identical, are very similar. And let's go and look at some of the performance metrics. So radiation efficiency, here we want this efficiency to be as high as possible, so as high up on the graph. The scales are the same, and you can see very clearly that for almost every frequency across the board, the Waveform QuadMini is higher, and sometimes significantly higher efficiency than the T-Mobile branded one. So that's a big change. And that's where this signal stuff, I'm not an expert on it, but I understand enough of this, and it is always very complicated. You can never look at just definitely not just the bars that's on there. That's basically worthless. I tell people don't even pay attention to the bars that are on the signal strength. But even as I'm learning through this, even looking at even signal to noise and RSSI, even those don't tell you the full picture of how the speed or the ping is going to perform when you test the unit. So the best test is typically a speed test and looking at the lag, and that's what you want to care about. But these types of metrics here can make a difference between a antenna that says, hey, it gets the same gain, it's a 5 dB antenna, but if it has different efficiency or different VSWR or different directionality, it's going to perform very differently for you. Alright, so here we have the isolation. Now on this one, the lower is better. And so here it's a little bit of hard to tell. You have to look at the exact frequency. So typically 600 megahertz is in 71 for T-Mobile. And you can see there, okay, the waveform one looks a little bit better. Alright, and then if you go to like 1900 megahertz, that one looks like it's a little hard to tell which one because of the noise of the T-Mobile one. If you go to 2.5 gigahertz, which will be the N41 band on T-Mobile, it looks like the T-Mobile one is a little bit under 30 there, so call it minus 35. And if you go to the Waveform one, it's maybe a little bit better in the high minus 30s in there. So a slight edge there to Waveform 1. If you go out to like C-band on Verizon, that's at about 3.8 gigahertz, I believe. So that one on T-Mobile looks like it is probably minus 45 range. And then on Waveform, it looks like it's, a little under minus 4, so we'll call it minus 38. So on that one, maybe the T-Mobile one actually has a little bit of an edge on N77. So Peak gain, this is probably what people are most used to seeing advertised, is how big of a gain do I have. And this one, higher is better. And here you can see a really big difference on the T-Mobile one, because that plot is very busy and very mountainous. And so you really have to dive into what frequency are you getting at your house. And you can look here down at the lower frequency is, I mean, even at the 1900 is not that great, but down lower, that 600 range, you are not getting hardly any gain at all. So if you're on N71, their T-Mobile small antenna is not going to give you a lot of performance. But even at the 2.45 gigahertz, you know, their N41, it has that big dip actually where it loses gain. Looks like right where you want the gain to be. So if you compare that over to the Waveform one, down in that low frequency, you know, it's at least 3, if not 4 or 5 dB gain versus the 0 to 2 that the T-Mobile one is. And then at the 2.5 gigahertz, it is, looks like over 5 on the Waveform one, and it drops down as low as 2 on the T-Mobile one. So that's why the T-Mobile one performs so poorly. You can look at some of these key metrics here. It just doesn't hold up. Alright, now the VSWR, I'm really not that familiar with it. I read up about it. I realize they say pretty much anything under 2.5 is considered good. And all these antennas appear to do okay, other than the T-Mobile small one. At least around the 1000 megahertz range, it does not do very well. Everywhere else is fine, but I don't think that's a problem, because I don't actually know a lot of the cellular bands that are actually at that 1000 megahertz. So I think any of those are okay from that standpoint. If we look at the radiation plots, so this is another differentiator. Both of the T-Mobile mini antenna and the QuadMini are deemed omnidirectional, but if you look here, the Waveform one is clearly more honest to that statement, where that circular pattern is pretty circular, other than a few little noise factors in a few places. The T-Mobile one, however, especially look at some different frequencies like that B2 band, it's definitely lopsided, where on at least the test that they had, it was more biased towards the right by a fair margin here. So what that means is this antenna literally does not matter if it's sideways, if it's facing towards it or facing away from the tower. It's going to get almost the identical signal, and that makes it placement much easier, because it doesn't matter exactly the orientation that it's in. Alright, and then some cables and feature information. You know, the T-Mobile one has a more rigid cable than this soft TPE. And then if you look at the cable loss as well, you know, this one only has 0.3 dB of loss over it, whereas the T-Mobile one is, because of the thinner, lower quality cable, it's over 4 times worse loss actually in the cabling itself. So it's also not outdoor rated, whereas this one can be outdoor placement. Alright, so I'm going to go do some testing now. There are lots of different ways I can test this. You can say, hey, I want you to test the gateway and the antenna in the same spot. I want you to put it 30 feet away. I want it to be upstairs, downstairs, attic, upside down, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to pick a few ones I think is going to hit for most people. But if I don't do something that you really want to see tested, please let me know. Put in the comments down below. Now, I certainly can't go out and test every single one that people ask for, but I can try to either answer it with my own thoughts, or actually do a future test where I cover some different comparisons as well.